a decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. A beautiful Saturday morning, Winnipeg Jets home opener later this afternoon. It's going to be a busy day, chock full of Illegal Curve. We got 2 hours of Jets talk for you this morning, and then, of course, later on this evening, we have the Illegal Curve post-game show following the Jets and the Panthers. I say good morning to Dave. I say good morning to Ezzy. I'm your host, Drew Mindell. Let's get started talking about the Winnipeg Jets. Gentlemen,
good morning,
great
Drew.
To see you this morning. Haven't seen you, of course, since Wednesday when we were at Boston Pizza Taylor Avenue. Thanks to so many of you who joined us live at Boston Pizza. Great time. More details on the next live on location show from Illegal Curve coming up shortly, but great to see both of you on this Saturday morning.
Yeah, absolutely, boys. It's been a while since we've had a Saturday, which where we have the morning show and then we have a game later in the day, right? And it happens to be a mid-afternoon game. So morning to Dom Zappia and everybody else who's joining us live and who's going to be possibly listening on the podcast. And yeah, I mean, we broke down the game. I mean, we'll probably touch on it a little bit, right, guys? But I mean, that was a game in which you thought the Jets were probably going to get at least a point, right? After Mark Scheifele tied it up late in the third period. And, you know, unfortunately, they weren't able to get a point there. But I think if you're the Jets, you have to be really happy with the way you played. I mean, all of the advanced metrics were in the Jets' favor. The shot volume was there. The top line of Scheifele, Connor, and Velarde was excellent. I thought the Perfetti line was also good. We saw the Jets rolling 4 lines. The power play looked good, even though they weren't able to score a goal. But yeah, I mean, you've got a Panthers team that's coming in here. They lost their first game, and they're without Aaron Ekblad and Brandon Montour. So that's your 2 best defensemen there from your Stanley Cup final run, right? So, you know, anytime Paul Morrissey is going to be back in town, you know, there's going to be a little bit of extra pomp and circumstance. But obviously, the Jets want to, you know, improve their record to 1-1 with a big win in their home opener.
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. As he's right, you know, you don't want to, you know, overemphasize how important, you know, the second game of the season is, because clearly it's not a must-win or any nonsense like that. But this is a good opportunity for the Jets facing a Florida Panthers team that is not at full strength, and it's unlikely that I believe the Jets will see the Panthers at full strength. They go to Florida next month, and I don't believe that Ekblad and Montour are expected back by that point in time. So this is an opportunity for the Winnipeg Jets.
Just quickly, Drew, apparently they're supposed to be out for around 20 to 30 games. Like, it's both shoulders for them. I know Ekblad had off-season shoulder surgery. I'm not sure if Montour had the surgery, but it's shoulder, but it's also something else for Ekblad. The long playoff run, guys, I mean, we've talked about it in years past. Sometimes, you know, you are relatively unscathed, but with Montour and Ekblad, they're going to miss a good, you know, third or so of the season. And, you know, you hope that they're still in a playoff spot, but those guys, I mean, those are the 2 guys on your back end that you don't want to be without. So just wanted to get that in there, that it's going to be longer term, and they probably won't be back till late November, early December, something like that.
Exactly right. So to my point, the Jets are going to face the Panthers this afternoon. That is not a full-strength Florida Panthers team. They're going to face them probably in November as well, Dave M. They're not going to be a full-strength Florida Panthers team. But from the Jets' perspective, they are, well, with the exception of Ville Heinola, and you can say if that's full strength or not, but Nikolaj Ehlers, who there was some concern about following Wednesday's game when he went hard into the boards at, trying to prevent the empty net goal. Ultimately, that didn't, that he was unsuccessful in doing so, but the Jets are at full strength. Everyone healthy, everyone accounted for at practice. You were there yesterday on Portage Avenue. What did you see when the Jets were on the ice yesterday?
Full contingent. They had everybody out, including Nikolaj Ehlers. And then after practice, head coach Rick Bowen has told us that there were no injury concerns with respect to Nikolaj Ehlers, which of course is music to Jets fans' ears to see him miss almost all of training camp, and then to potentially get injured in the pretty much a meaningless play with 6.5 seconds to go in the third period of a game that was over. that would have been pretty disastrous from a Jets perspective, given what happened last year and all that sort of thing. So the Jets need Nikolaj Ehlers to be healthy, and they need him to be effective, and they need their team, who, as he touched on, were really effective, to continue to do what they did. The Florida Panthers, that was the talk of yesterday, were in a similar mode because they got goalied by Gustafsson in Minnesota, and it seemed like their feelings were that they deserved that win because they controlled the play, much like the Jets did against Calgary Flames, but didn't come away with the 2 points. So that Florida is not going to want to start the season 0-2. The Jets also similarly don't want to start the season 0-2. So you're expecting a pretty good tilt from these two clubs. Obviously no history there. We're not going to go back to the South-Least division, Ezzy, and think about those
you're
days.
aging yourself.
Well,
remember those 6 o'clock starts, boys, those first couple of years? Like,
they're like 5 o'clock here.
I remember like work was over and I had 10 or 15 minutes to get to the rink, but there were a lot of 6 o'clock central starts.
There were 5 o'clock starts because remember there were sometimes it was crazy. I just remember you're just like, oh God, this is so early. And now of course we're at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. Yeah. What is it? Next Saturday is 7:45 or whatever it is. Not in Saturday. When is it? Next Wednesday, whatever it is, where all 32 teams are playing and it's staggered. Like it's like the Jets are playing like a 7:45 game or something like that. I think it's the St. Louis. It's the St. Louis game. I think it's on the Tuesday, where all the NHL teams are playing, but they've basically.
Dave, we're only capable to think about the game in front of us.
I was going to say, Dave's looking way
not
ahead.
me. It was just a discussion.
One game at a time, Dave M. One game at a time.
It was a discussion in the press box yesterday. But anyways, let's get back to the focus of the Jets and the message. And the message was that, from Josh Morrissey and Adam Lowry, the two guys who spoke after practice yesterday, was just that they want to keep doing what they were doing because they were fairly successful with the way they played, and they were happy with the way they played. There were a few things that Rick Bowness wanted them to clean up in terms of coverage, and we saw that in a couple of instances, obviously, that they got burnt in the game against the Flames. But for the most part, I think overall the tenor of the messaging was that the team, the coaching staff, were happy with the game against the Flames. Obviously not with the outcome, but with the result, but with the way in general the team played, and that they're hoping to keep that going today, this afternoon, against the Florida Panthers.
Well, that's just it. I mean, the Jets played by all accounts, by all metrics, except for the one that counts, the Jets played a very solid game on Wednesday night, much like the Panthers did, as Dave mentioned. I mean, I believe they outshot the Minnesota Wild something like 41-21.
Yeah.
It was also a one-sided game. So if you're thinking that the Florida Panthers are going to necessarily take a step back because of the injury issues on their back end, well, they're still pretty loaded up front, Ezzy. Anytime you can still roll out guys like Sasha
Matthew
Barkov.
Didn't Matthew Tkachuk, I think he had 10 shots and 15 shot attempts.
Something like that. He was a one-man wrecking crew. So,
this really was a carbon copy because Velarde had 8 or 9 shots, right?
Yeah,
I mean, both teams badly outshot the opposition, but still lost the game.
Yeah, it was a unique instance for both teams. So you can understand how both teams might have a little bit of a sour taste in their mouth, or a taste of saying, look, if our game resembles how it looked in game 1 of the season, we're going to be in an okay position. Now, there, of course, won't be any sort of morning skate today for either team because of the time frame. But, I mean, I think it would be safe to assume that you're going to have, Connor Hellebuyck against Sergei Bobrovsky.
It'll be the exact same lineup that was against Calgary. I don't think anybody's expecting, Logan Stanley to go in the lineup or David Gustafsson to go in the lineup, even though I think both Stanley and Gustafsson would like to go in the lineup. And I just wanted to mention one thing too, because we talked about Paul Maurice's return, but it's also Jamie Compon's return. And I wanted to give him a shout out. I don't know if you guys saw this. The St. James Junior Canucks won the MMJHL title, and Jamie Compon was there. I guess they were getting their MMJHL rings, but I saw there were pictures of Jamie congratulating the Canucks. So just wanted to say that's pretty awesome because, Jamie was here for how many years, guys? Like, was it 5-6 years?
Certainly.
And he made a lot of friends in Manitoba. So just Jamie's always been a great guy. I think, Dave would agree with all of his dealings with the Jets and the Moose, and just wanted to get that in there. But also a couple familiar faces with Kevin Stenlund as the fourth line center right now for the Florida Panthers, and our good friend Dmitry Kulikov playing second pair minutes right now for the Florida Panthers with Ekblad and Montour out. So obviously, this defense isn't very good when you take out those two, but Gustav Forsling's a good defenseman. I mean, Oliver Ekman-Larsson, I had to do a double take. Like, I honestly forgot that he was on the Panthers. I don't know about you guys, but like that was something that I completely forgot about with the buyout from the Vancouver Canucks. But obviously, you know, the Jets with their speed and the fact that they're rolling 4 lines, you have to think, for me at least, Drew, that's a strength and something the Jets can capitalize on. It's not the most mobile defense. Like, let's be honest here.
Yeah.
You know, Kulikov, I mean, he's seen better days.
Well, if you had said that Dmitry Kulikov, you know, when he left Winnipeg, however many years ago that was, is going to be playing a significant role,
he's been on like 5 or 6 teams since the Jets.
I know,
mean, teams just keep signing him.
You know, he's I guess the definition of grizzled veteran. But you're absolutely right, Ezzy, that the Jets, you know, with a weak Florida Panthers back end, or a weaker, or a weekend, depending on you know which word you want to use, Florida Panthers back end, and the Jets' new ability, seemingly, to be able to roll those sort of more balanced lineups out, they should be able to take advantage of that. But, you know, to the same point, though, the fact that Florida was so one-sided against the Minnesota Wild, I think it should also be a good wake-up that they're not just going to roll over and say, woe is us, because of the defensive issues that they're facing. Not that you would expect them to. But you look at that back end, and it is not a who's who of household names there. I mean, Oliver Ekman-Larsson has probably is the most well-known of their defense, but you know, it's been a long time since Oliver Ekman-Larsson was really effective when he was in his prime with the Arizona Coyotes.
It seemed like we were talking about that for years, right? Like,
yeah,
the Coyotes trading Oliver Ekman-Larsson. He's just, his better days are behind him. And, you know, good for him that he's getting, like, he's not a top pairing defenseman anymore, but because, as we talked about, Ekblad and Montour are out, he's getting that opportunity. I mean, I think an argument could be made that at this point in his career, Ekman-Larsson's more of a third pairing defenseman, just based on his, you know, defensive and offensive impact. We should mention too, Drew, Sam Bennett is not on the road trip, so he's not playing this afternoon as well. And so you're going to see some new faces. Like we were talking about it right before we came on air, like Mackie Samskovich, if I'm pronouncing that right. Matthew Maskey Samskovich is a first rounder from 2021. Played for the University of Michigan with Adam Fantilli. So that's, for Jets fans, Samskovich is on the left wing on the second line. He's a guy that you should look out for. He's got a lot of offensive upside, but there's a lot of depth on this Panthers team. But like, those are 3 key players out of the lineup. And again, you mentioned it, Drew, the Panthers badly outshot the Wild in a losing effort. But this is definitely not a full Panthers lineup that the Jets are going to see this afternoon.
No, I would agree with that. What do you want to see from the Winnipeg Jets? I mean, we've been, you know, generally speaking, Dave M, we've been full of praise for the Jets based on their Wednesday effort, notwithstanding the final score, which is all that ultimately matters. But, you know, from the Jets' perspective, you know, is there anything more that you want to see from them? You know, I mean, from, you know, if I was picking something, and you can feel free to piggyback on this or jump off of it completely, I would say the defense needs to step up. I thought the offense was fine in game 1, but the defense, and we've talked about it, and you don't want to pile on Nate Schmidt with his, you know, the poor decision towards the end of the game. But, you know, you want to see sort of, I think, a more concerted defensive effort in their own zone, from my perspective.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any question about it. And we saw it on, I think it was the first or second goal, where the forwards weren't necessarily back the way they needed to be. I think it was the Kyle Connor play where Scheifele,
the shorthanded goal,
the shorthanded one where Scheifele back-checked like crazy, and the rest were not to the same degree. But anyways, look, you can always isolate the plays, the bad ones, and that's, you know, that's what we do here when we analyze the game and see where things went wrong. But I mean, overall, that game against the Flames, if you can carbon copy that and play that 82 games of the year, and that's the biggest thing for this Winnipeg Jets club is the question of consistency. But if you can do that, then this team is going to win more games than they lose, and I think by a significant margin, because of the manner in which they played as a collective team group. And again, Nate Schmidt, unfortunately for him, did get injured, and so he did deal with an injury throughout the course of training camp, which I thought had him a step behind. And to be honest with you, as you think I think you said on Wednesday, and I agree with you, I would imagine Ville Heinola probably would have maybe started that game just to give Schmidt another couple of days to heal up and kind of get back into a rhythm a little more significantly, instead of just throwing him into it. So look, I mean, that's part of the reality of the NHL, is that you have to deal with guys who are sometimes not at 100% but I think, yeah, ultimately, Drew, it's hard to criticize the effort, because it was overall there. And look, Connor Hellebuyck needed to be better. I mean, the first goal was unfortunately just an unlucky bounce for where it landed. But, you know, the third goal, even though it was people were saying it's a knuckle puck, I thought it was one that he could have had. And where was he on the empty net goal? He wasn't even on the ice, for God's sakes.
Well, and, just going back
Very
to,
clever,
talking about Nate Schmidt, and I think that was overblown. Yes, he made a mistake, whatever. You wonder, like, who would be the next defenseman up if he does continue to struggle, though, or deal with a nagging injury. Like, would it be Declan Chisholm? Or would it be Logan Stanley? Like, I would rather see Chisholm.
I agree.
But right now, guys, like, it shows you, how nice it would be to have a Ville Heinola in the lineup, because there would be no question who would be going in for Nate Schmidt on the right side, right?
Mhm.
So, yeah, I mean, the Jets do have to be better defensively. But again, it's one game. I mean, look at the Edmonton Oilers. They got smoked 8-1 the other night. The same night the Jets played the Flames on Wednesday night, right? So, like, I think we have to take these early games with a bit of a grain of salt, right? Like you had Nick Ehlers, who hadn't played any preseason games. You've got some guys that are dealing with injuries from the preseason, and it's just the nature of the early part of the game. You tend to see kind of more wild, right? Another game, the Leafs beat the Habs 6-5, right? So, like, I just think, like, they're still working some things out. There's new players, in the system. We talked about the LA Kings, but they looked fine. I mean, Rasmus Kupari was maybe the most impressive to me. And you can see that fourth line is probably going to contribute more offense than when they had Kevin Stenlund and Saku Maanalainen and Axel Jonsson-Fjällby on that fourth line. Even though, shout out to Axel Jonsson-Fjällby, nice little pass to Brad Lambert for the goal yesterday for the Moose, right, Dave? That was their first or second goal of the game, I forget. But
I think Jeffrey Veal's still getting his face punched in. That was a good tilt last night there, Dave.
What a fight. That was like old school, like Domi versus Probert. You got to love that, right? If you like fighting. But, back to your point, though, Drew, about, the Panthers, they still have really good forward depth, even without Sam Bennett. And it's Listerainen, who's going to be in that second center role with I was just checking the lines on our friends with Daily Faceoff. It's actually Nick Cousins with Listerainen and Matthew Tkachuk on the second line. And then Mackie Samskovich is on the third line with Anton Lundell and Sam Reinhart. So, like, when you have players like Lundell and Ryan, that's the thing. Like, the Panthers might have squeaked into the playoffs last year, guys. But I mean, especially when Bobrovsky is playing at his full potential, it's still a really good team. So, you can talk about Ekblad, Montour, and Bennett being out of the lineup all you want. But this is still a really good Panthers lineup. Carter Verhaeghe is another guy that we haven't mentioned. Like, Verhaeghe is on the top line with Barkov. And who am I missing here?
Evan Rodriguez.
Evan Rodriguez. There you go. He's new to this Panthers team. So, I mean, they're working things out with new faces and young players in their lineup too. So, I mean, the Jets know that. They're not going to take the Panthers lightly.
No, and Paul Maurice is obviously back in Winnipeg. I think our buddy Mike McIntyre sat down with him and he spoke effusively about his time in Winnipeg and the Winnipeg market, as he always does. He's still, everyone knows Paul at this point in time. You know what he's going to say. You know how he's going to frame it. You know how he's going to, blow some smoke up some rear ends. But that's okay. People like being told that they're pretty and that they're the prettiest girl at the ball. There's nothing wrong with that.
Love me, tell me.
Tell me that you love me. Tell me how pretty I am. But and Paul's very good at that. But at the end of the day, he knows how to still, he will get a lot out of a Panthers team that is, banged up, as we talked about. But their forward group is really, I think that's the key matchup in today's game, is the Jets defense and, trying to neutralize that Florida Panthers forward group, because that forward group is still very dangerous, still very, still very talented. And so how do the Jets handle that? How does the Jets, with their question marks on the back end, both teams, a little bit of mirror image, not,
I don't think this is going to be a low scoring game. I really don't.
It hurts to believe that it would
be. At least it's not going to be on the Panthers side. I think the Jet, what I'm saying is, I think the Jets are going to score some goals this afternoon.
Well, that's a big question.
5-2 Jets, Drew. That's my prediction.
Okay, well, There you go. So that means the Panthers are going to win 8-0. But the question is, from the Winnipeg Jets perspective, you look at the balanced lineup. You look, is that going to translate throughout the course of the season to better offense, because this was not an offensive, dynamo last season. I think they finished 21st in the NHL in goals for, if I'm not mistaken. So that is, an area of concern for the Winnipeg Jets. There were so many games, particularly during the slump in the latter half of the season, Dave M, where the Jets couldn't score. Now you hope a more balanced lineup and the ability to roll 4 lines will hopefully help in that area. But this still, the Winnipeg Jets team is still a team that I think has is not as sure thing offensively as a lot of people might expect when they see the big numbers from Scheifele and Connor and usually Ehlers if he's healthy, Dave.
No, I don't think you're wrong, Drew. I think that there's definitely a, space for the Jets to improve it in that regard. But I mean, again, it's hard. We just have to look at the one thing that these teams tend to say, or the coaching staff tends to say, is last year was last year, and let's focus on this year. We've started anew. So they're not going to, when you ask Rick Bowness about things that transpired last year, he really does tend to just say, well, this is this year, that was last year. Let's focus on what's happening now. And look, we saw from this Jets club against a Flames team that's also, remember, that Calgary team was looking to have a bounce back. And when, Kyle Connor scored that goal against Jacob Markstrom, you thought, holy Hannah, this is going to be Jacob Markstrom of old. But then he played well, and he played really well throughout the course of the game. We saw that actually last night in the Moose game, which we'll touch on a little bit later in the show. But I think it's just, again, if you look at that Jets effort on Wednesday night, I really do think it was a really good effort. Again, there are mistakes, and you have to try and minimize that. But I think overall, and the one thing I would highlight is the fact that you were getting it from a lot of opportunities throughout the course of that lineup. And as he's right, like the fourth line is potentially going to be a fourth line that actually plays 10 to 12 minutes a game, not a fourth line that plays, 5-6 minutes with one guy who's a PKer who may get up there to 9. So to me, that is going to have a big impact, I think, down the stretch. Not necessarily, obviously, early. It could have you hope, if you're a Jets fan, that has an impact early in the season. But I think not having as much, tread taken off the tires of the Scheifeles, the Connors, the Niederreiters, the Ehlers, because you're not playing them 20 to 24 minutes a game, might have a positive impact on this team overall. Again, that's future casting, as Spency would say. And I'm not trying to look, 40, 50, 60 games down the schedule. But I just think, like, overall, I think from that perspective, Drew, being able to roll the 4 lines, having confidence in your forward lines, thinking that all 4 lines can score goals, I think that's something that, from a Jets perspective, we've been clamoring, talking about that for so long, right? The idea that you can't just have a top 6 anymore and just think that's sufficient, and then 2 lines that tread water. You need at least a top 9 that can put the puck in the back of the net, Ezzy. And now the Jets, in theory, we'll see what it looks like overall, but in theory could have 12 who could put that puck in the back of the net.
I'm really going to be focusing on the Perfetti, Ehlers, Niederreiter line this afternoon, boys, because we've already talked about it today and on Wednesday night's post-game show. Like Scheifele, Connor, Vilardi, they looked like they were in mid-season form. They were the most dominant line on the ice. I think most people will agree. They were finding each other. They were creating space. We talked about the shot volume. Vilardi led the way. Forget how many. I think, didn't Scheifele have 4 or 5 shots as well? No. I'd have to go back and check. But
they had 84. That line, the Connor, Scheifele, Vilardi line, had 84% Corsi 4 5-on-5. So in 12 and a half minutes of ice time. So to say they were dominant is reflective of that.
Yeah. So I think we're expecting to see more out of Perfetti, Ehlers, Niederreiter. Not saying that that line has to score 3 or 4 goals in order for the Jets to win the game this afternoon versus the Panthers, but just because of a little bit of the rust in Ehlers' game from missing the preseason games, and I think the fact that you've got Sam Bennett out of the lineup and the Lister-Rainin, Cousins, Kachuk line is most likely going to be the matchup there. We're not sure, but I think that's a huge advantage for the Jets. And that line, and again, to Dave's point, if you've got the first 2 lines going, then you throw in the third and fourth line, the Jets are going to be averaging 5 or 6 goals a game.
It's funny, I was on X or Twitter or whatever the hell it's called, and a lot of the guys who use advanced metrics and analytics to try and do projections, and they're projections, so you take them with a grain of salt. There's one in particular, I'm sure you follow him, Ezzy and Dave, J Fresh Hockey, and he's been rolling his projections and inputting all of his inputs, and every number that spits out at him says that that his projections loves the Winnipeg Jets, and I think a lot of it has to do.
The projections had the Jets winning the President's Trophy.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I think it was at 109 points, right?
That's what I'm saying. And he can't figure it out. But I think you look at it, and the Jets should be a good possession team. They should be a team that is able to control the puck possession-wise. And when you control the puck possession-wise, usually good things happen. And then it's a question of, can the back end hold up? And I think that is the giant question mark that is hanging over this team and will be for the majority of the season. Can Neil Pionk find the form where he's not a detriment and he's not a laggard on the back end, even if he's just keeping pace, even if he's just, say, 50% as opposed to being caved in. Same with Nate Schmidt. If the defense, everyone expects that the forward group is going to be able to have a solid numbers, probably solid traditional numbers and solid advanced metrics. That's the expectation. Question is for the Winnipeg Jets on the back end, and that's going to be the talking point for probably a lengthy portion of this season. Especially after game one, that's the talking point, and it'll be interesting to see what the talking point is after today's game against the Florida Panthers. 3:00 puck drop. 5:45, give or take a couple minutes, is the
Kevin
post-game show.
revenge game, Drew.
The Kevin Stenlund revenge game. The Ken Wiebe revenge appearance. I don't know if it's a revenge appearance, but Ken Wiebe is coming up next this Saturday morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Don't go anywhere. We take a trip to the buffet with Wiebe's World coming up next.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Boston Pizza harnessed Fanalytics to test if the game is better at home or at Boston Pizza. The results are irrefutable. Catch the game at Boston Pizza, powered by Fanalytics.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
We did it again!
You're on fire, man.
There's power in a handshake after a great game or great deal. It shows professionalism and respect. Two qualities Zappia Group Realty take pride in. You don't build a business where 95% of your clients are referred by others without honesty, integrity, and total dedication to client satisfaction. To sell your home for more in less time, shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Get started at ZappiaGroup.com.
Are you dreaming of your very own backyard rink this winter, but dreading the work involved? Well, stress no longer, because the Rink Guys are here to make it happen. The Rink Guys are Winnipeg's first outdoor skating rink installation and rink maintenance service. The Rink Guys offer free site evaluations and different rink construction options. Plus, they use a custom-sized liner to prevent any damage to your lawn. Lighting packages are also available to help illuminate your rink during those long, dark winter nights. To get your rink started today, visit therinkguys.com. Bottom of hour number 1, we've been reliably informed he's hungry and the buffet had been closed, but let's open it up and welcome to the program. Hang on, this is going to be weird. From the Winnipeg Free Press, I've been practicing that all night, and of course, still Kenny and Rennie. Ken Wiebe is our guest on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Kenny, good to see you, buddy. How are you?
Yeah, tremendous, guys. Great to be with you. I've been thinking about you guys a lot the last few days here with the mayhem happening. So anyways, thoughts with you. Good to be with you. And yeah, let's crank that buffet wide open here.
We appreciate that, Kenny. That's nice of you to say that. I'm also very hungry, which is obviously not going to surprise you at all, considering I'm 240 pounds.
On a good day. Kenny, we were talking about it before the break, that you look at this Winnipeg Jets roster and the offense, the forward group, it should be good. It should be fine. They're balanced. They are possession drivers, at least historically they have been. We saw it on Wednesday in Calgary. You were there. That this was a team that offensively looked to be the what we expected them to be. Questions, of course, are on the back end. Is that the linchpin for the success factor for the Winnipeg Jets this year? Getting that sort of reliable and, if not exceptional play on the back end from certain guys, but at least be it so that they're not being caved in and they're maintaining their own.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the biggest question mark about this team is how they're going to defend. I mean, the defensemen are obviously part of that, Drew. We saw that the other night, but I mean, I would say, it was funny. I got a couple of DMs saying same old Jets. And I said, well, how many times did you see the Jets give up 22 shots on goal in a game last season? And how many nights did you see their power play generate countless high danger chances from the slot area, whether it was Mark Scheifele or Gabriel Velarde? And, how many times did you see the Jets, fight back in the third period when down by a goal? Especially in the second half. Yes, we saw it in the first half, but for the most part, yeah, there were some similarities and parallels in that, some dramatic errors ended up in the back of their net. Yes, that's also game 1 of the season. Do they have some things to clean up? Of course, but I would say that if the Jets play that style of game, they're going to win more often than they're not, and they're going to be a playoff team. So, of course, we understand that there was a big-time maneuver that happened late that cost them when they were tired. Nate Schmidt iced the puck. That's accurate. Nate Schmidt didn't lose the draw in the defensive zone. Nate Schmidt didn't lose his man off the wall. Was it a costly play in the game? Yes. This is also a guy who hadn't played since the first preseason game. I understand folks want to act like it's the playoffs and that a player should be benched for any minor error, but I'm here to remind you it's an 82 game season. Errors are going to happen, and nobody feels worse than Nate Schmidt about what happened. He wasn't trying to ice it. He was trying to have the perfect curling draw weight so that it would either be on net or be just inside the goal line so that his tired teammates who had been on the ice for a minute already could get to the bench. So hey, that's got to get cleaned up. There's no doubt about that. Nate Schmidt knows it. Rick Bowness knows it. Everyone else knows it. But Rasmus Kupari had a tough shift there too. Lost the draw, and you guys saw it too. He made the right play. He thought he had Elias Lindholm pinned on the boards.
Yeah.
He finishes his check perfectly, but he doesn't recognize Lindholm spinning off him on the inside position. And when you've been on the ice for 113 and you just probably exhausted the last of your energy by trying to hit the guy against the boards, by the time he has a step on you, you're not catching him on the way to the net for the backdoor tap. So anyways, it's a lot of things happened on that play. And yeah, could they have been avoided? Of course. But I know some folks in the chat are asking about timeouts. In the 2017-18 season, they abolished the ability for the defensive zone team to call a face-off. So timeout when there is a D-zone face-off. That was not an opportunity or option for the Jets. I am surprised, guys, that maybe someone didn't accidentally step on their stick and
five guys stepping on the stick at the same time.
Yeah, you only need one. You only need one, Drew. But
my chin strap's a little loose.
Something, my helmet needs adjusting. The strap is off. All of the things. So, but yeah, I mean, people can say it's rainbows and unicorns all they want, but like honestly. If I had told you the Jets were going to outshoot their opponent 37-22 and out-attempt them 83-45 in the game, most people are going to be happy with that type of performance. So, of course, there's things to clean up all the time. Players need to be better, but there were a lot of things that if you're building the foundation, you put down a couple of important pillars in game one, and now it's about learning from the mistakes and seeing what you can do to build on those types of things.
Absolutely. And to your point, Kenny, when Mangiapane made it 1-0 Calgary, the shots were something like 10-2 for the Jets, and the Jets were all over the Flames. So anybody who watched that game knows that on the deserve a win meter, it was clearly tilted in the Jets' favor. And I wanted to ask you about Rasmus Kupari, because you mentioned him there, on the winning goal for the Flames. And obviously I agree with you. It's just one game, so we don't want to put too much stock into one game. But what did you think of Kupari? First off, I forgot how big he is. He's a big guy, 6'2", 200 pounds. And he played, I believe, 11 minutes. Barron was the least ice time on that line, just under 9 minutes. Obviously Nemestikov, the other guy. But what did you think of that line? Because obviously a lot of people are talking about that being the Jets' best fourth line in maybe since, the 2017-18 season.
Yeah, I mean, I liked a lot of what I saw from the trio. They're also, I mean, as you guys saw, they're used in different situations. They get bump up shifts because Kupari and Barron are, on the penalty kill. Nemestikov moving up afterwards with certain guys. So I love the burst of speed. I think it was after the Mangiapane goal. I think you saw Kupari go wide on the left wing side around the defenseman. Got a really good scoring chance. Didn't quite lift it as high as he would like to. But that's a great scoring chance. And throughout training camp, I mean, Dave was there quite often. What we see from Kupari, speedy guy, very involved. And what I like most about his game is he's around the net and around the puck. Now, he hasn't finished at this level, at the NHL level, to the point where you're going to say this is an automatic double-digit scorer. But I see a lot of qualities that would lead me to believe he can become a double-digit scorer. Whether his best position is going to be center or wing, I think the jury is still out on that. But I liked a lot of pieces to his game. Morgan Barron's a guy who played a lot on the third line last year. So naturally, if that player is on the fourth line after being on the third line previously, that speaks to the level of depth, both on the day-to-day roster and into the organization. You guys know I'm a fan of the way that Vladislav Nemestikov plays. He can basically give you whatever you need in whatever role at any particular time. Up and down the lineup, penalty kill, second power play, really physical presence. So yeah, I mean, I think recency bias does sneak in, and I understand a lot of folks have forgotten that at times during that 17-18 playoff run. The fourth line included at various times Brian Little, Yoel Armia / Jack Roslovic, and Matthew Perreault. So I'm not quite ready to anoint this group as, and I know you said since that time, but there are others who say it's naturally the best fourth line of all time. It definitely has the potential to be one of the best of all time. And I would say one of the most important things coming out of the game, and of course the play of the first line is more important, but when it comes to how the Jets are going to perform over the course of 82 and beyond, if they reach their goal, they need that fourth line to be playing, 9 or 10 to 12 minutes a night so that you're not taxing the top line and playing them 22 to 24 minutes. And we know Kyle Connor, Mark Scheifele, Gabriel Velarde were all north of 20. And because they didn't play until Saturday afternoon, it was easy to do that for them. But you don't want that to be happening in a 3 and 4 and in the back-to-backs. Of course, they can handle it at the start of the year. But if you want these guys to have energy and ability to perform and produce in April, May, and potentially June, then you want to be playing those guys in the 20-minute range, but you have to be able to lean on the fourth line and not be scared to play them against any line. And I think that's the benefit for the Jets in this season, is that you're going to be able to throw those guys over the boards and not be nervous about them getting caught out against the top offensive line. Now, are you going to be nervous if they're out against McDavid? Of course you are, but you're nervous when your top checking line is out against McDavid. So let's just keep it all in perspective. But yeah, I liked a lot about that fourth line. Could they drive play a little bit more? Sure. But for the most part, the Jets drove play. And Ezzy, to your original point, I mean, the first period was all Jets until the back-to-back penalties. And, then a bouncing puck ends up on the stick of Mangiapane. And in a situation where it could have been 3-0 Jets, they're trailing 1-0. And, although they did a nice job of battling throughout the contest, they just seem to be chasing the game a little bit throughout the course of the game, and that's difficult to do, especially when you're trying to crank up the intensity meter from preseason to regular season.
Mm-hmm. Chasing the scoreboard at the very least. Ken Wiebe, our guest of the Winnipeg Free Press, talking about the Winnipeg Jets. Later this afternoon, the home opener, the Jets and the Florida Panthers, followed by the IC post-game show, and then Kenny and Rennie. So a very busy day for all of us here at Illegal Curve, and Ken and Sean, of course.
So do we call Kenny Dump or Kenny Chase? Because I think Jay Bell used to be Dump, right? And then Mike was Chase.
I'm definitely Chase. Mike has shifted over. Anyone who's seen me on the ice on the odd recreational game knows that I like to chase the puck around. So I have adopted the chase portion of that deal for our Saturday column. Yes,
that was part of the negotiation. That was in the high.
Otherwise, we're going to need a new name, Drew.
Yeah.
I'm familiar with having to dump the puck in. Not the most skilled, but. I did a lot of chasing in my day, and
Mike wanted Mikey and Kenny, but that's obviously way too close to Kenny and Rennie, so you had to bring back Dump and Chase. I love it, Kenny.
Ken, just over a month, or just under a month ago, Adam Lowry was named captain. Appropriate, probably, that he was in Calgary for his first game, first regular season game, to be wearing the C. You were there in Calgary, so what was the reception like for a son of that city getting the chance to wear the C in Calgary, in his hometown, with the reaction from friends and family?
Yeah, it looked awesome, and fortunate enough to be able to write on that topic this week, and it was really loved being able to reconnect with guys like Jason Jaffrey, and speaking with Mark Lamb as his junior coach, and even able to snag a quote from Blake Wheeler from our good friend Arthur Staple during training camp there, and Dave took some time on opening night in Vegas to share some thoughts as well. So really enjoyed putting that story together. But in terms of the reception, I think it was a special night for Adam for sure. He's been talking a lot about wanting to have this feel normal, and I think after close to a month, it's starting to feel normal. But I love that element of the it would have been special for him to do it anywhere, but the fact that he was able to do it in Calgary with his mother, Elaine, was in the building, and one of his sisters was there, and a lot of his buddies, was really neat for him. And as I wrote, this is a guy who, in one of the biggest moments of his life, is thinking of others. He's thinking of the coaches he had in the Bow Valley Minor Hockey Association and with the Calgary Buffaloes, and he's a guy who he loves Winnipeg, but he also loves the city where he grew up and did a lot of his development. I would say under normal circumstances, I think the reaction would have been a little bit different. It was just so emotional in the building because of the honoring the Snow family. I think that obviously took center stage, and not that people in the building didn't recognize what was happening with Adam, but I thought it was a really interesting and fun moment for the two players. Being able to be part of a ceremonial puck drop is often, it doesn't have a lot of meaning for people in the building. But you saw the way that Kelsey Snow hugged both Michael Backlund and Adam Lowry. The fact that Adam is a Calgary person, he would know Chris Snow probably better than a lot of Jets. There was just so much emotion in the building. But when you look at the organizations, when you can get past the emotional element, the fact that it's Backlund standing across from Lowry, two teams that didn't have a captain last year and have passed the baton to players who are homegrown and been in the organization, I think it was kind of a fitting moment. And for Adam to be able to do that in his hometown, Dave, obviously was really special. Had Adam been able to, maybe sneak home the game winner or the overtime winner, then you have the full Hollywood ending. But the fact that he was able to do that and be able to wear the C in his first time was definitely something very special to him. And he did tell me, in the week previous that, it would just sort of happen by accident. I mean, he could have been in that road game against the Flames, but, when Rick was talking to him about the number of games he needed, he said, I want to be in the last game. And he wasn't planning it himself either. The last preseason game happened to be a home game. So they skipped the Calgary game and he was able to do it. And it definitely made it very special for him. And I think he's handled the role well. And the other thing too, I mean, he was very quick to point out, it's not just about me. It's not about one person. He talked about how much that, he's been leaning on Josh Morrissey and Mark Scheifele and that it's a collective still. But I think Adam's done a really good job of being captain, and I think he will continue to do that as we move along here.
Kenny, on Monday, I was on a plane and I got a push notification on my phone while I was on the plane. And I'm pretty sure I did the GIF that Remus created when you found out that Jeff Gorton got fired in New York. Of course, I'm talking about the Scheifele and Hellebuyck contract extensions, which to me definitely came out of left field. I mean, what was your reaction? And now that the dust has sort of settled a little bit, how has your reaction changed, if at all, since the news broke earlier this week?
Yeah, the biggest surprise is the timing for me, Drew. I thought that this was something that could drag on, and Kevin Cheveldayoff had certainly let it be known that he was not in any hurry to be moving on. Like, for the folks saying you can't,
it would be breaking news if Chevy was in a hurry to do something.
Well, I mean, the whole idea of you can't have these players on your roster beyond March 8th. I mean, it's October 14th, so it was kind of funny in itself. But I mean, we're always looking down the road, and the crystal ball had been a little bit cloudy. And, quite frankly, we go back to day one of training camp, or technically day one of on-ice sessions, when the players spoke. Connor didn't sound like a guy who was all that interested in re-upping, but it's vintage Hellebuyck. He if he doesn't want to show you his cards, he doesn't, right? So
don't play poker with him.
I mean, we shouldn't be surprised by that. And ultimately, I believe the negotiations with Hellebuyck had been fairly strong or regular since August. And we know that's not the case with Mark. Mark told us on the first day of on-ice sessions, there had been no substantial discussions. So the fact that they went from no discussions to a long-term 7-year deal in a 3-week span tells you that, twofold, the Jets were ready to engage, and that Scheifele was open to sticking around. And of course, his agent would be sniffing around. And we know that those guys were on the market in the summertime, taking calls. That didn't mean that they were pushing to move them. But ultimately, the players, as we heard on Tuesday, had been in close contact about how this was going. The fact that they landed on, identical deals, I think, is symbolic for the organization. And I think it's meaningful, because we thought, based on some of the discussions, Hellebuyck was looking for 9.5 or 10. So the fact that he took 8.5, it's a deal that is positive for both sides. Is there risk when you sign a player, or two players in this case, whose deals will start at 31 and will last 7 years? Of course it is. But what we know so far, Mark Scheifele goes out of his way to take care of his body, and Connor Hellebuyck has been nothing but a workhorse. So, I mean, it would make you feel a little bit more confident at the end. Father Time is still undefeated, but for this next stretch, when some folks weren't listening, when people like I was saying there is not going to be a rebuild here, this shows you that the Jets are committed to winning in the now. Now, the next part of that equation for Kevin Cheveldayoff will come to pushing more chips in if the Jets show that they can be more than just a bubble team and grow into a contender that's pushing the elite teams. I don't expect that you don't just sign these two players to be around the bubble or to be in the mushy middle. You're signing them because you're trying to win, and your window is widest when those players are in their early 30s compared to their mid to late 30s. I mean, I think that's an important part of the deal. Mm-hmm. And the other part of it that I found interesting also, Drew, is that both Mark Chipman and Kevin Cheveldayoff said it almost didn't make sense to do one deal without the other.
Right.
And not just the people and the personalities and the fact that they're homegrown signings and all that, but if you don't have a number one goalie and you do have a number one center, you're always going to be needing the other thing. So now the Jets have both positions under control. There are no question marks about whether or not you have someone internally that can handle a promotion into that role, or if you have to go out and try to trade for one or sign one as a free agent. Two of the most important positions on the ice, and you could even say this too, they just also have a number one defenseman on their roster, which a couple years ago people were, they thought Josh Morrissey was a top pairing guy, but now he's grown into a Norris Trophy contender. So the three of the most important positions on the ice are now in good hands and on longer-term extensions, and they just so happen to be homegrown talents and guys that could potentially spend their entire careers with the organization. And let's not kid ourselves. In a market like Winnipeg, that matters a lot more than in another market where it's easier to attract players.
It's a really good point. And
Ken,
go ahead.
Just had one follow up. Yeah. Were you surprised at the dollar figure on the AAV of the contracts? Because it seems, look, the expectation is that the salary cap is going to go up, around the league, and probably by a significant jump over the next number of years after the COVID escrow is paid off. So, in terms of a percentage of the actual cap hit, it seems like as these contracts move on, the percentage is not going to be, tremendously significant. So to me, the long-term commitment I get and everything else, I mean, it was a little surprising, but I thought that they both guys left money on the table, which I thought to be particularly surprising.
Well, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, like I said, I think there is some give and take. Money on the table is a relative term.
Sure.
What we saw that, if a Stanley Cup contender had blown the Jets away with an offer for one or two of those guys, they might have been moved. So that's not to say there might not have been more money, but let's look at some recent examples, Drew. The Ilya Sorokin deal is the best comparison for Connor Hellebuyck right now. 2.5 years younger. Hellebuyck is slightly above. Now, did they pay a full Winnipeg tax? Not really. It's only $250,000 difference, but you're buying those late years into the 30s. So I think there's give and take there. With Mark Scheifele, let's use Bo Horvat as a recent example. The numbers are very similar to the Horvat deal. So for me, I think it is market value. Now, could there have been a team that, is maybe lower in the standings, or could a non-contender have offered, $9 million to Mark Scheifele if Mark Scheifele puts up 40 goals and 90 points this year? Sure. You could argue that he left money on the table, but I would say for a guy who is looking for a raise, just got himself a raise of nearly $2.5 million well into his 30s. So I don't know that he left a ton of money on the table. And the other thing too is, was another team going to be willing to go to that term? I think for both players, term was the biggest thing, and the fact that they went to 7 years is important. And for Scheifele, it's a long time to spend in an organization. Same for Hellebuyck. So this is a guy who came in at 18 and he might leave at 38. Like that's 2 decades of service, and he's going to be paid incredibly well. And I've said this before, I've written it. We all saw this, and back to the whole recency bias thing. Mark Scheifele didn't have a great finish to last year, injury aside. We know that. But people have forgotten the emotion Mark had shown at the Dale Hawerchuk statue unveiling. And the fact that he spent time around Dale's former teammates and saw how revered Dale was even all this time later, I think mattered to Mark. It's not an accident that his favorite player is Steve Yzerman, but you can't ignore the influence of Dale Hawerchuk. And for folks who may not know, Mark was committed to going to the NCAA. He had signed his letter of intent, and then he had a meeting with his mom and Dale Hawerchuk in Barrie and was blown away in the meeting, and he became one of the biggest influences in his entire life. And one of the things we know about Dale is loved here, but I think as Dale's life moved along and he saw how revered he was here, I think if Dale could have done one thing over in life, it would have been to spend his entire career in Winnipeg. So guess what? I don't know this for a fact, but I'd be shocked if Dale didn't tell Mark and express that sentiment to him in one of those last conversations before he passed away. And that would resonate with someone like Mark because of the influence that Dale has had on him. So, and Mark Chipman told me this, guys. Mark is their Dale, the 2.0 version. Of course, there's differences and there are similarities. He didn't want that to happen. Mark has work to do to become a Hall of Famer like Hawerchuk. I know that. Mark knows it. Mark Chipman knows it. Everybody knows it. But as the first draft pick of the 2.0 era and as a talented player who has routinely been a point-a-game player, he's the kind of guy that could have a statue built of him down the road as well. And that, I think, is the intention of both the organization and the player, not the statue part. The fact that he wants to be worthy of a statue down the road and bring a championship. That's the other thing. Dale wishes he could have brought a championship home when they kept running into the heavyweight Oilers and the 89 Flames.
Yeah.
So I just think that that's an important part of the story that sometimes gets overlooked. And yes, I mean, Mark needs to round out his game, but there are signs of that already in game one. On a power play where he chased down a player on a 2-on-1. Was that happening all the time last year? No, it wasn't. But it was happening in game one, and it's going to have to happen with regularity. And now that Mark's got his money, the only thing that will matter to him is trying to do the things that lead the Jets to winning. And him producing is part of that, but him becoming a better two-way player later in his career, like Hawerchuk and Yzerman, is part of the process as well.
And I think we need to mention the game tying snipe, Kenny, as well. That was I'd say that was a pretty decent shot from a guy who scored 42 goals last year. But
yeah, not bad.
I didn't know that Mark Scheifele, and that's why I always say that you're the most knowledgeable Jets insider, even though Dave might be the Moose insider. I didn't know that about Scheifele committing to the NCAA, and I'm sure a lot of people watching didn't know that, Kenny. So thank you for mentioning that, and also bringing up the Dale Hawerchuk Scheifele connection. Because we all know that Dale Hawerchuk was a role model for Scheifele and many others, obviously, and he was a very important guy for Scheifele. But I think that was maybe something that was underrated, Kenny, that Scheifele's willingness, or not just willingness, desire to spend his entire career with one team, right? And I think there was a lot of conjecture after the end of last season with everything that was going on with Pierre-Luc Dubois and Blake Wheeler. It was easy to lump Scheifele in there as a guy that maybe was on the trade block. So I at the end of the day, it was a huge surprise to most of us. At the end of the day, it's just great news for Jets fans to have your number one center and your number one goaltender locked up for 7 years after this. And the question I wanted to ask you, to me, it's not necessarily obvious, but because of the contracts being signed in the same amount and the timeline that you mentioned, right? Scheifele saying that, his camp was not in negotiation with the Jets over the summer, but then we believe that you mentioned August was when the Hellebuyck contract extension talks picked up a little bit. In your opinion, does it seem like Scheifele was only going to be signing a contract extension with Hellebuyck? In other words, Scheifele was only coming back if Hellebuyck was coming back.
I mean, it's a great question, and I don't know that for sure, but I also, too, I had an interesting conversation with Kevin Cheveldayoff before the scrum happened, and he said it was by design. He wanted the players to take the time. He knew how pissed off they were at the end of last year, and that's a good thing. If you don't accomplish your goal, you should be disappointed, and it should matter to you. And, he didn't want them just rushing with the pen to sign, even though they were going to have a life-changing amount of money paid. Now, I said, like, how difficult is it to have that balance? Because if you're Mark Scheifele and the conversations are happening with Connor Hellebuyck's camp and they're not happening with yours, you as an organization run the risk of that other player feeling like he's not a priority. So that was something where he said, well, you just there needed to be the requisite amount of time taken in order for a decision of that magnitude to be made. So it didn't bother Scheifele. And that's interesting. Like, Drew, going back to what you asked me about the conversations, I mean, Hellebuyck didn't show his cards. Mark was quite honest in saying, he still wanted to be there and that there hadn't been any conversations. And it's so interesting because the day before, one of the guys he used to train with in Gary Roberts' camp, Steven Stamkos, was downright disgruntled by the fact there had been no conversations. Mark said it with a smile and was just sort of being matter of fact in saying, I'm still open to being here, but there haven't really been any talks. So some people interpret that as Scheifele's gone. And for me, I thought that was more of a, olive branch or whatever you want to use as terminology, that Mark was still interested, but he was curious to see where things were at. And I think it's interesting too, in those important positions for the guys to sign that's, same contracts, similar to what happened in Chicago, minus the banners, of course. The banners had already gone up in Chicago when you had the matching deals. But that those two guys put themselves together. I'm not sure it was one without the other, Ezzy, because, if Scheifele had been offered a huge deal without Hellebuyck, maybe he still thinks he has to take it. But the fact that those two, in wanting to accomplish their goals of A, getting paid, and B, having an opportunity to win, it's much easier to do the winning part with both of them in the fold than if you have one of them and you're trying to replace the other. So I would say it's not 100%, but I do think it was a major factor in Scheifele, because the discussions happened later. He sees Hellebuyck committing and says, it's a lot easier for me to commit when my buddy has committed because I know how hard he's working and he knows how hard I'm working. And that's something that both players expressed quite candidly at the podium the other day. And you can't ignore it. You can't fake that kind of admiration and appreciation of what the other is doing to improve their abilities when it comes to the craft.
Kenny, I'm going to squeeze in one quick question here because we're, on that topic of Mark Scheifele and now that he's got the contract, now that that's behind him, a lot of times there's the curiosity, and your former colleague at the Winnipeg Sun, Paul Friesen, was asking about the benefits of having guys in that contract year hungry to prove themselves, and now they've kind of lost that thing. So what kind of player are you going to have? Now, the question I'm going to pivot a little bit from the contract element of it is, will Mark Scheifele, you mentioned Steve Yzerman being his favorite player, and you look at Yzerman's numbers in the late 80s, 137 points, 155 points, 127 points, but then of course the Red Wings weren't winning Stanley Cups, and then his numbers dropped down. He became a more defensive-minded center, and obviously there were some other players that factored into the Red Wings' success, but Stevie Yzerman changing his game and becoming more defensively responsible, the one thing that Jets fans have wanted to see from Mark Scheifele. So do you see that in his game? We saw it in game one. You're talking about that back check earlier in the show, Ken, but do you see that pivoting now, that he doesn't have to worry about securing the bag and getting that big contract? He's got it. He's set for life. Well, he was probably set for life before, but now he's really set for life. So the question becomes, do you see that pivot? Because that's what the Jets are going to need from Mark Scheifele in that becoming that top tier center for the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, I mean, Mark Scheifele's never been someone who lacks motivation, guys. You've all seen it since he arrived on the scene in 2011. The fact that he, doesn't have to prove himself by scoring 45 or 50 or getting 90 to 100 points. I don't think that makes his pursuit of those high water marks any less apparent. But I do think that it will allow him to take a little bit of the pressure off of himself in order to try to have to secure the bag, while being concerned that if you go with an all-around game and your numbers dip well, now somebody in a corner office is saying or has a spreadsheet that says, oh, well, Mark used to be a point-a-game player for 6 years. Now he's just a 70-point player. And again, I say that somewhat facetiously because there aren't a lot of 70-point players in the NHL regardless. But in order for Mark to take the next step in his career, he needs to round out the other part of his game. And I would argue, too, for a good chunk of the first almost 3/4 of last year, definitely 2/3, Mark was, not quite 2/3. I would say that his defensive awareness was much higher than the year prior. So I think we kind of got caught up in, it's a lot like when you have a prospect who's been under the spotlight for so long. When you see someone for as long as we have seen Mark Scheifele, of course you're going to see the warts because you're seeing him every single game for 10 or 12 seasons. But don't forget about the positive parts of the game. And I'm not taking Mark off the hook. There are parts of his game that need improvement, and he knows what they are, and he's working at them. But lots of teams have players, and I'm not just talking about Mark. Like, how much defense have you guys seen Patrick Kane play in the last 10 years? Like, there are lots of players who are offensively gifted who are not Selke,
I don't know, Kenny. I think Ovechkin's going to win the Selke
candidates.
this year.
I mean, let's not forget that simple fact. So, long-winded way of saying I don't expect motivation or a lack thereof to be an issue. Mark is not a complacent person. Never has been. I don't think that signing this extension that doesn't even kick in until next year will make him a complacent person. That's not how he's wired. It's not in his DNA. Now, could he have produced more if he had been under the Mark? To me, Mark didn't have anything to prove on the offensive side. Like, he had been a 6-time point per game player already, and then just had a career high 42. We've always known he has a quick release and a great shot. That was apparent at his first training camp. There were Joe Sakic kind of comparisons. So I think it's important to remember, I don't think that his production is a concern, even though he's signed the contract. And I just think that this is a highly motivated player. He's always working hard on his game to push himself to be better. And I still expect him to be a productive player. I mean, does it mean 35 or 40? I'm not sure. I mean, that's up to him. But I also do think that in the long run, Dave, your point being, if Mark Scheifele can become more like Steve Yzerman and the Jets can surround him with other players to pick up the offensive slack so that he can become a better 200-foot player, that will help them in the long haul in terms of trying to be a playoff team and a team that competes for the Stanley Cup. So, yeah, I mean, I think for sure, I still think he's going to be in the 35, 85 to 90 range, but I think that's also going to be related to the fact that I think Kyle Connor is going to be much closer to the player of 2 seasons ago than last season. And I think Gabe Vilardi, I know it's only one game, but yeah, Gabe Vilardi, 7 shots on goal. They were all high danger chances. Yeah. And if someone who can shoot the puck like Gabriel Vilardi can create even 3 to 5 chances a game, he's going to score a lot. So if your line mates are scoring a lot, it will stand to reason that your point production will be high, whether it's 5-on-5 or on the power play.
Ken Wiebe will have coverage of this afternoon's Jets-Panthers game for the Winnipeg Free Press, as well as with his buddy Sean Reynolds, Kenny and Rennie, coming up later on tonight as well. Kenny, as always, we appreciate your time. We appreciate your insight. And officially now, the buffet is closed. Thank you, Kenny.
Thanks for having me, guys. And don't worry, Mole. I saw you in the chat room. I'll look to collect that $100 bet at your convenience.
There you go. Kenny's got eyes everywhere. If you think you're going to sneak anything past him, you're sadly mistaken. Kenny, we'll see you later on this afternoon. We'll do it again real soon, buddy. Be well.
Enjoy the day and the weekend, fellas. Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. There he goes, Ken Wiebe, joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Before we go to break, Kenny addressed it sort of at the start of his interview, and so many of you have reached out. I know I've received a ton of comments. I assume Dave and Ezzy have also reached out, the goings on of the week, and it was a pretty, I'll be blunt, pretty shitty week. At least that's my feeling, and I'll let Dave and Ezzy speak for themselves if they want. But every time that one of you in the chat or anybody who's listening to the podcast or reached out on Instagram or reached out on Twitter, it helped. I know it doesn't seem necessarily like it was a lot, or that it was just a quick note of saying we're thinking of you, or a quick note of appreciation, and it really did help tremendously. So I would just want to say thank you to each and every one of you who reached out this week. It was just a good example of what we can all do in all situations for one another, just sort of lending a hand and just saying to somebody in our lives, whether or not we know them that well, hey, I know you might be going through something. We're here to help you. We're here thinking about you. We're here to support you. So I just wanted to say to everyone, thanks so much for that. When we come back, we'll do some Winnipeg Jets over-unders. Frankie Corrado is going to join us at the bottom of the hour for more hockey talk. Lots more to come. Hour number 2 of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Even though we're well into hour number 2 already, it's coming up next on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Boston Pizza harnessed Fanalytics to test if the game is better at home or at Boston Pizza. The results are irrefutable. Catch the game at Boston Pizza, powered by Fanalytics.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
We did it again!
You're on fire, man.
There's power in a handshake after a great game or great deal. It shows professionalism and respect. 2 qualities Zappia Group Realty take pride in. You don't build a business where 95% of your clients are referred by others without honesty, integrity, and total dedication to client satisfaction. To sell your home for more in less time, shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Get started at zappiagroup.com.
Are you dreaming of your very own backyard rink this winter, but dreading the work involved? Well, stress no longer, because the Rink Guys are here to make it happen. The Rink Guys are Winnipeg's first outdoor skating rink installation and rink maintenance service. The Rink Guys offer free site evaluations and different rink construction options. Plus, they use a custom-sized liner to prevent any damage to your lawn. Lighting packages are also available to help illuminate your rink during those long, dark winter nights. To get your rink started today, visit therinkguys.com. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, 10:15 Saturday morning. Post-game show coming up a little bit later on tonight, right around 5:45. Dave and Ezzy are going to drive that bus and bring you all the latest regarding the. You're on mute, Dave, so I don't know what you said. Doing all the latest on
drive the
Jets
bus right
and
over
the
you.
Panthers. What? Say that again.
We're going to drive the bus right over you.
I won't even be there, so you can drive it right over me.
Well, I mean, Drew, it is game 2 of the season, so you deserve a day off.
Thank you, Mr. Hey, you're taking Tuesday off. It's not. Look, I have a. Laura has procured us tickets to go to a gala tonight, so apparently I'm now a gala.
Someone's fancy.
Huh?
Wow.
I'm a gala.
Although, hold on,
guy.
I have a question. How is Laura? I see. I was going to start this earlier, but I didn't want to derail the show.
Yeah.
Laura's now back in town, presumably. Yes. After our Wednesday show,
why don't you get that thing off your face, Drew?
that those handlebars were going to be removed, but evidently Laura likes the handlebars because they are still on your face.
Yep.
No, she's back in town. She's not living at the house though, so I don't think she likes the handlebars at all. But
okay.
No,
she's in a hotel.
Well, let's be honest. Can you blame Laura? Free mustache rides?
Yeah, thank you, Ezzy. But I think she's going. I think the mustache is going to get trimmed down so that it evens up with the beard a little bit later on. So it will be a conversation that I have to have before, like I said, we head to the gala and make ourselves look all pretty and handsome later on tonight. But I know you guys will drive the post game show very well after the Jets and the Panthers. But now,
good question. Hold on, that's a good question from Spency. Before we get into the Jets over under for the 23-24 season, you better check to make sure that mustache is allowed in a gala. Like, you might have to be clean shaven, Drew.
I honestly don't know if I'm allowed in the gala looking like this. I would imagine not. I mean, I don't think I belong in a gala to begin with. They might just by default ask me to leave, even if I look appropriate. But yes, a combination of all the different things will lead to, I'm sure, a very entertaining evening, nonetheless. But I will be there in spirit with you guys watching the post-game
Drew
show.
will be there, Dave, wearing a ball gown.
Hey, I shaved my back for some. I got to shave my back for some reason.
All right, please, let's go. Over under. Let's go.
Winnipeg Jets over under for this year. We do it at the start of each season. Over the last 5 years, Mark Scheifele has played 357 games and scored 159 goals, 0.44 goals per game. If he maintained the same pace, he would score 36 goals this year. Over or under Mark Scheifele scoring 37.5 goals this season?
I'll start off, Dave. I'm going to go over. I think he's going to be very similar to last year, but I actually think he's going to score a few more goals. I'm predicting a 45-goal season for Mark Scheifele.
Wow, so he set the career best last year, and he's going to blow that out of the water this year, is according to Mr. Ginsburg.
Well, I was also going to say 45. But because he's claimed 45, I think Mark Scheifele is going to go over. That line is all offense. I really do think that the Connor is going to have a big year, and I think Mark Scheifele also have a big year. So I'm having him in the 43-44 range.
There, well, look at you guys. My number was way low, and you guys just said way over. So I like it.
Did Dave just say 43 to 44 range?
Yeah.
So he's going to score 44.5 goals.
It's very specific range that Dave's going for. In the last 2 years, Connor Hellebuyck has started 66 and 64 games. This year, with Laurent Brossoit returning as his backup goalie, Connor Hellebuyck will start over or under 61.5 games.
Under, I don't think Dave it's going to be much less. Like
Dave wanted to start with that one, but as he jumped in there and
come on, Dave. Laurent Brossoit, he's going to play around 20 games, probably 25 games, right? It's going to be close, right? And that's why you use that number. But I'm going under. I think Scheifele. I think Hellebuyck is going to start in that 57 to 60 game range.
Yeah, I'm definitely going under as well. All the talk this training camp that we've heard from head coach Rick Bowness, Connor Hellebuyck himself, and Laurent Brossoit would suggest that it's going to be a much different distribution. His former backup, David Redditch, of course, just got reassigned last week to the Ontario Reign. So, I
thought you were about to say the Ontario Hockey League.
Not quite. But anyways, the point is that, it's definitely an under for me. I think that they're going to try and have some, pull back, as we've talked about. No goaltenders played more minutes, faced more shots, and Connor Hellebuyck became a starter in 15.
And I also what's factoring that in for me as well, Dave, is that I think the Jets are going to have more points this year and be higher up in the standings. Like, I have them third in the Central, and I could easily see them finishing second or first in the Central. So that's why I think Hellebuyck will get some rest and Brossoit will get some more starts down the stretch. Obviously, if both guys are healthy.
Yeah.
Yes. Health is, of course, the overriding factor in all these questions. So let's assume, for conversation's sake, everybody is healthy. Cole Perfetti starts the season as the Jets' second line center. In his 2 full seasons as the Jets' second line center, or 1B center, if you will, Pierre-Luc Dubois had 60 and 63 points, respectively. Cole Perfetti will score over or under 50.5 points this season.
I'm going to go over on that one. I don't know if he gets up to the kind of mid 60s range, but I easily see him getting into the mid 50s. And if he's going to be mid 50s, why not, high 50s, early 60s, right? So I'm going to go over. I think if Perfetti, again, health is, underline all of this, but I think if he plays close to a full 82 game season, I have him kind of in that 55 to 60 point range.
Yeah, I'm with Ezzy. I mean, I guess we're drinking from the same cup today because it's.
Well, you both got COVID then.
Well, guys, he had 30 points in 50 games last year, right? So, 50 to 55 points isn't that ridiculous, especially considering the guy absolutely tore it up in the OHL.
No, I think, and again, one of the things that we saw with him in the AHL was when he was playing center was he figures it out. He figures out where and when he can go to those hard areas, and again, he'll have that same adjustment in the NHL. But yeah, to me, Perfetti is going to be over that margin, Drew.
There you go. We're throwing up some of the, you can participate in the chat and give us your overs or unders as well, and we'll throw them up on the screen. In the best season of his career thus far, Josh Morrissey had 76 points in 78 games played. Factoring in unexpected degree of regression, Josh Morrissey will have over or under 71.5 points this season.
I'm going to go under for that. I mean, look, Morrissey, you mentioned it. It was the career season by far. I don't think there's going to be like a massive drop-off, but I do think there's going to be a drop-off. So I think he's going to be, I'm going to say he's going to be kind of in that 50 to 60 point range this year.
Okay, so that's a fairly significant drop-off you're expecting. But
Dave,
Dave,
that's more closer to what he's been his entire career.
Yes, no question. And Dave, you were pointing to the sky, and I assume it wasn't because your ceiling was about to collapse on you.
No, it's because my my house is on fire.
Oh, okay. Well, that's fair enough. We can accept that. And nonetheless, stay with the show, though you'll panic and leave afterwards. You think over based on your little happy dance.
I mean, look, he's already got 1 point. So I mean, he's basically on pace for 82. You got to go with that logic as that it's going to carry forward. But
I obviously hope it's going to be over. But I just pulled up JMO's hockey DB. He had a 40-point jump from his previous career high. Morrison's previous career high was 37. All I'm saying is that wasn't a small jump. And again, I'm not saying
perfect. I love it what he's saying.
He's only going to be in the 35 to 40 range. I'm saying 50 to 60 point range. That's all I'm saying. You forget that was an exponential jump. That's all I'm saying, Dave. I hope that Morrissey gets 85, 90 points. I'm just saying that I think it's going to be hard to replicate it. So that's why I kind of think it's going to to be more around the 50, 60 range.
Yeah, can I steal that dance at the gala tonight, by the way?
Sure, absolutely. It's not copyrighted. It's all yours.
Okay. Moving on. Last year, Kyle Connor had a shooting percentage of 11.4%, his lowest since becoming a Winnipeg Jets regular. In the 5 years previous, Connor's shooting percentage was an average of 15.52%. This season, Kyle Connor will have a shooting percentage of over or under 15.2%.
Over. Slightly, though.
Dead air makes for great TV and radio.
I'm going to say it's right around his number. That's what his shooting percentage is going to be.
Thank you, Ezra. That was really insightful. I appreciate that one. Dave, can you take over now?
16 or 17%. I don't think it's going to be anything crazy. Obviously, he's already got a goal in his first game. But I agree with Kenny. I think Kyle Connor is going to be very close to 50 goals again this year.
Yeah, I mean it's interesting, but will his volume be significant? What will his numbers look like? I'm gonna say under, but not by much. I think he'll be in the 14 to 15 range.
Okay. 47, 62, and 45. The number of games played in each of the last 3 seasons for Nick Ehlers. 72, 82, 82, 62, and 71. The number of games played in each of Nikolaj Ehlers' first 5 seasons. Nikolaj Ehlers will play over or under 65.5 games this season.
Oh, boy. That's really the hardest hitting question, isn't it? And the craziest thing about the last 3 years, guys, is it's been all different injuries. It's not like Nick Ehlers keeps getting injured in the same area, right? Like he's had incredibly bad luck. So I'm going to go over. I think he's going to play 78 games.
So he's healthy. That's as he's saying he's healthy.
He's going to be healthy. I think the neck spasms, were obviously a concern, but I think Ehlers is going to be over that. And I'm mainly saying that because the Jets need him to be healthy for an entire season. So I'm going to go over.
Well, we don't like it. We can't be the show that jinxes folks, Drew. We got to be careful in that regard. But I'm going to go over because I think Nikolaj Ehlers got it out of the way with his training camp situation. So I could see him playing. I mean, I'm not saying he'll never have to deal with anything, but maybe nothing of significance. So you're going to go in that 72 to 75 range.
Last year, 9 different players suited up on defense for the Winnipeg Jets. This year, the Jets will play over or under 9.5 different defensemen throughout the course of the season.
That's a good question because Ville Heinola is injured, right? So that changes it. If Ville Heinola was healthy, you might see a bit of a rotation there, right? 9.5. I'm going to go over because I do think there's going to be a move depending on where the Jets are at close to the trade deadline. I'm expecting there to be a move, especially with Scheifele and Hellebuyck signing those contract extensions. We know that the Jets are going to be a buyer as opposed to possibly being a seller, I guess. So I'm going to go over. You're going to see Ville Heinola later in the season. I think you're going to see Declan Chisholm come into the lineup. Kyle Capobianco, maybe he gets a little bit of time. I don't know if he necessarily plays as many games as he did last year, but I'm going to go over. I think they'll probably use 10 or 11 defensemen this year.
Yeah, Dave? You've got 6 already. You know they're going to use Chisholm and Stanley at some point. That's 8. As he's right, Heinola's in for 9. And are they going to call someone? Oh, it's a tough number, Drew. That's why we give you that's why we let you do it. It's I'm going to say under. The defense actually held up.
Drew's the quiz master, Dave.
Yeah, the defense has held up relatively well. So I'm going to go under on that one.
Drew's a master of his own domain.
Yes, depth scoring has been a frequent issue for the Winnipeg Jets. Last year, of players that were in the Jets' bottom 6 of forwards, the Jets received a total of 58 goals. This year, from players who are ostensibly in the Jets' bottom 6 of forwards, the team will receive over or under 65.5 goals.
Ostensibly, good word. I think it's going to be over. Just because the depth is improved, right? Like you've got Morgan Barron, Dave, on the 4th line. I think Morgan Barron should be on the 3rd line and Appleton should be on the 4th line. That's a different conversation.
I would agree with that.
I like Barron better with Lowry and Iafallo on the 3rd. And then with Rasmus Kupari and Nemesnikov currently on the 4th line with Barron. I mean, that's just an improvement over players like Kevin Stenlund and Saku Manalainen offensively, because Stenlund and Manalainen were good defensive players. But I'm going to go over. In the bottom 6, I think they're going to be probably around 65 to 70 goals.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. No, I mean I'm of the inclination to go over as well.
Okay, one last question. Then we're going to bring in Frankie Corrado from TSN. After joining the Jets last season, Vlad Nemesnikov and Nino Niederreiter combined for 23 points in 42 games played. Total games played. This year, Nemesnikov and Niederreiter will combine for over or under 66.5 points.
66.65 points.
66.5. I didn't add another decimal point.
Oh yeah, no, it's all good. And obviously everyone knows that the reason why those games were so low last year is because both of those guys were acquired prior to the trade deadline. Right. Just reminding everybody that that's why they didn't play a full season or close to a full season with the Jets. I'm going to go over. I kind of have Nemesnikov in that, 25 to 35 point range. I mean, if he plays on the 4th line, it's definitely going to be closer to 25. And then Niederreiter, Niederreiter has been a consistent player over his career. He's usually kind of 40 to 45 points. So I think it's going to be over, not by much, but probably, if let's say Nemestikov's at 30, Niederreiter's at 45. So that would be 75 points.
Yeah, I mean, Drew, I think the whole idea is you're got to go over if you're expecting this Jets team to have those bounces, especially with Niederreiter on that 2nd line with Ehlers and Perfetti. So, right then and there, you got to have him And I suspect because of the way we've seen Vladimir Mesnikov used on this Jets team in that Swiss Army role, that he'll get a bump up as well. So I suspect I'll go over on that one.
There you go. That wraps up over under for the 23-24 season. Later on in the year, we'll look back at our predictions. But for now, we pleased to welcome to the show from TSN. He's a hockey analyst. Frankie Corrado joins the program. Frankie, good morning. Thanks very much for joining us. How are things?
Things are good. Thanks for having me. How you guys doing?
We're doing fine and dandy, Frankie. We're talking about...
We're not doing as well as Drew, Frank, because Frank's going to a gala... Pardon me, Drew's going to a gala dinner tonight that he just told everybody about. So we're doing well, but obviously Drew's rolling in a much more highfalutin crowd.
Yeah, no kidding. And I bet, you know what, if he didn't pay for the tickets, that's even better.
Yeah, now I like where you're thinking, Frankie. That's exactly right. My wife was the one who decided to pony up the scratch for this one, so I'm just there as arm candy. I mean, I would think she'd be able to get some better arm candy, but nonetheless, she was willing to take me with her, which I appreciated. Obviously, Frankie decided we welcome you to the program, talk about the Winnipeg Jets a little bit, talk about the league as a whole as the first couple games of the season are underway. You know, what I want to start with, I mean, you know this better than anyone, having with your NHL experience and everything else. You know, when a team goes from being a top-heavy team, you know, where they're really being driven by one line or two lines, versus a team that then becomes sort of a team that relies more on depth and has increased depth throughout the lineup. How does that change sort of the perception, you know, within the dressing room? You know, I'm fascinated by that, because here in Winnipeg, the Jets have always been sort of a team with a strong top six and then a weak bottom six. And this year, you can see that it was an emphasis to get more depth within the forward group. How does that dynamic change maybe a dressing room?
Hey, I mean, listen, it's pretty obvious that the personnel has a lot to do with that. And it's almost like the guys that are, you know, in the bottom of the lineup or the middle of the lineup, you almost need to see them take a little more ownership in the team. So it's not looking at the first line to get everything done at every time, or it's not sitting there on the bench thinking, okay, the power play better score now, because if they don't score, I don't know how we're going to get one. It seems like the teams that are really good year after year, and the teams that sort of score by committee and they score lower in the lineup, they get contributions at big times from guys like on the third line, or every once in a while, it's like a fourth line goal, and the second line just seems to play pretty consistent. And so, you know, to kind of turn that over to the Jets, right, when you see the moves that they made now. So Dubois is out, but Iafalo's in, Velarde's in, and you're thinking, okay, there's the personnel change that gives me two options lower in the lineup rather than one player higher in the lineup. And with the new guys coming in, I would say it almost works like this. Guys that have been there for a long time, they're almost like programmed to think a certain way, where it's what I just talked about. It's like the big boys got to go out there. They got to get the goal. They got to lead the way. But the fresh blood coming in, they're not thinking that way. They're thinking, I really want to impress this coach because I want to play a lot. I want to sign a new contract here and stay here for a long time. Like, you have some other factors at play when there's some new, you know, fresh mindset being implemented into the lineup. And I think it's very appropriate for where this Jets team is at, you know, to score by committee and have contributions lower in the lineup. And with the young guys coming in, it's like, I want to be a big part of this team, regardless of whether I'm on the third line or what my role really is.
You know, Frank, we obviously want to get, you know, back into Scheifele and Hellebuyck, but wanted to ask you about the defense, because obviously you played defense in the NHL, and, you know, there's been a lot of credit there, at least in Winnipeg, amongst Jets fans. And I guess, you know, we were a little bit surprised that there weren't any moves on the back end. Not that the Jets top six defensemen or you know, below average or anything like that, but just based on the fact that at times that was the Achilles heel of this team. And specifically, I wanted to ask you about, you know, this, what comes up a lot here in Winnipeg is this issue of the Jets having too many undersized defensemen, which, by the way, I don't agree with, right? You're 6 feet, which is kind of average height for an NHL defenseman. But when you look at some of the teams that have been successful in the NHL playoffs, like, you know, whether it's Vegas or St. Louis, with guys 6'3", 6'4", that's been a criticism with guys like Neil Pionk and Nate Schmidt, who aren't the biggest guys. And a lot of people are, and here in Winnipeg at least, are clamoring for some bigger defensemen. And we should mention Brendan Dillon's a big boy. Logan Stanley's a big boy when he's in the lineup.
He's a very big boy.
What is exactly? But what is your kind of thought on that? Because I think it's pretty ridiculous that a lot of people talk about that. Because first off, Morrissey and Pionk, I mean, they're 6 feet. It's not like they're, you know what I mean? Like that to me is not. It's not exactly small, or 5'11", whatever it is. I'm 5'9", so I mean, if I'm complaining about guys' heights.
You got a big heart, though.
I got a big heart. Thank you. But what? Like I'm sure
his doctor calls it an enlarged heart, not a big heart.
Yeah, a baboon heart. But Frank, what? I'm sure you've heard that too. That's been a bit of a knock on the Jets that they've got too many undersized defensemen, especially on the right side there with Pionk.
Yeah, you know what? It's funny. We did a little exercise on SportsCenter a little while back where my producers asked, can you, like, if you were going to play all 7 of the Canadian teams, pick out one weakness or the biggest weakness for all 7 of those Canadian teams. When I got to the Jets, I was thinking about it. Like, they still have offense. They can score goals. They're deeper up front than they probably were last year. And where the weakness lies is on defense. But what exactly is it? You can't just say it's defense, right? And I looked at it and I said, well, Josh Morrissey's an elite puck mover. And I said, after that, I think there's a little difficulty as far as moving the puck out of their zone. And when that happens, then you get into a situation now where guys that are somewhat smaller, like you mentioned, like not somewhat smaller, but average, like average size, they get hemmed in. And like every team would love to have the Vegas Golden Knights blue line because they're all monsters. They can skate really well, and they all move the puck quite adequate. And there's actually some guys on that team, when you think about Theodore and Pietrangelo, that are elite puck movers. The problem is those guys are not available, right? Like they're just not out there. And you look at the premium that teams have paid over the last couple years to acquire those guys in free agency. It's very difficult. Like I look back at this year, Luke Shen got 3 years, I believe, at 2.75. Like, he was with Toronto. Toronto would have loved to keep him. They can't pay him that kind of money. They tried to get Radko Gudas. He ended up getting $4 million a year in Anaheim. Like, are you going to pay Radko Gudas $4 million and attach term to it? I mean, it's the term that would scare teams away, right? And so we're seeing, Eric Goodbranson last year. He got a lot of money, and I think a lot of people looked at that and said, okay, teams are placing a priority on these big, strong, rugged defensemen who can move the puck fairly decent, who can skate fairly decent. And then you look back at this, this past free agency, and a guy like Shane Gostisbehere, guy like John Klingberg, Matt Dumba, those guys all got 1 year. But all the big guys, they got term attached to it. So teams are really valuing this kind of stuff. And just, speaking from my own experience, so, when I played, I was 6'1", I was 195 pounds. I was a guy that I thought did everything fairly decently, but nothing great. If I could go back in time and pick one thing that I could do really, really well, it would be like being really strong in my own zone, because I know like I could really carve something out and just have a little bit of a niche that way. With that being said, like there are some bigger bodies here. Like Dylan's a big body. I think Nate Schmidt is even a fair, like Sandberg is not a small guy. Like there still is that. But to go out and say that, we need to bring in the monsters who can skate and move the puck. Yeah, so does everyone else. And they're not available to you. So sometimes you just got to work with what you got and hope that they can play at the highest possible level they can.
TSN hockey analyst Frankie Corrado is our guest Saturday morning. You're listening to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Reminder, later on tonight, just before 6 o'clock or thereabouts, the Illegal Curve postgame show following the Jets and the Florida Panthers.
Frankie, the big news here in Winnipeg, the big news around the NHL, of course, were the signings of Connor Hellebuyck and Mark Scheifele to those 7-year dual extensions or identical extensions. What can that do for the room? Because we know that could have obviously very easily, especially here in Canada, become a distraction. In Winnipeg, we talked about it with them at the beginning of training camp. It was left alone. But the reality is, especially once you start traveling on the road, that's anything anybody's going to want to talk about. From a player's perspective, first of all, what kind of boost can that provide? And also removing that element of distraction from the team, what can that do for the guys in the room?
I think it's massive. Like huge, because for all those guys in the room going into this season, it's hard not to hear the chatter. It's also hard not to put 2 and 2 together. And like, guys aren't stupid. So guys can understand that, there's two big names in our dressing room that are unrestricted free agents. And, one of the players has very bluntly indicated he just wants to play where he thinks he can win a Stanley Cup. And if he wasn't going to re-sign in Winnipeg, you're thinking, all right, that guy, like, I'm going to take his word at face value. He does not think we can win a Stanley Cup here. So if those deals didn't get done, that was going to loom over the dressing room. And guys, like, you're at the back of the bus or you're at meals and you're thinking, man, what are these guys going to do? Like, what's the team going to do? What are these guys going to do? It's something you keep thinking about, and you're not sure, okay, what direction are we actually going in? Are we heading for a rebuild, or like, how are we going to make this work? How are we going to be a good team? For them to announce the signings when they did would be one of those things where the guys all come in the room the next day and it's like, we're doing it. Like, we are not giving up hope on this thing. We're going to try and make something happen. Our two biggest names, our two superstars that have been here for a very long time, they're in here with us. Like, I think it's a massive boost for the team, and it just eliminates all that questioning as far as what direction they're going to go. I said it on SportsCenter. I give a lot of credit to Rick Bowness. And yes, Chevy, I'm sure, like, he did a lot of heavy lifting there, getting the contracts done. But, a GM can throw bags of cash at a player and say, hey, I want to pay you X amount of dollars. Doesn't necessarily mean the player, wants to play out what's going on within the organization. But, like, as a guy, like, I played for Rick Bowness. He was the assistant coach in Vancouver. Like, everyone seems to really like playing for this guy. He tells you exactly what you need to hear, not exactly what you want to hear. He commands a lot of respect. And if it was a different coach and the players weren't sure about, how he conducts himself, how he communicates, how these guys are going to do things on a day-to-day basis, or the vision of the team, they probably would test their chances in free agency. But the fact that Rick Bowness is there and he's establishing a certain, and I'll use the buzzword culture, he's establishing a certain culture. I think that's a big reason as to why those guys decided to stay. And quite frankly, everyone in that dressing room is going to be better off for it, because now there's no guessing. There's no half in, half out. It's go time, and it's trying to make the playoffs, and your best players are all the way in with you.
Frankie, you were a member of the Toronto Maple Leafs when Mike Babcock was the head coach. Are you surprised that he seems to have learned nothing and is now again out of work? You're shaking your head already.
I'm not surprised at all. That's who he is. He was never going to change. And I thought Brian Hayes summed it up on Overdrive perfectly. And, so he gets fired. There's no repenting on everything that he did over the years. He got every last dime from the Toronto Maple Leafs and had a verbal commitment that he was going to sign with the Columbus Blue Jackets before that last paycheck from MLSE even cleared. This guy faced no consequences for any of his actions. And quite honestly, like, the stuff you hear about, that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so many more things that'll never come to the surface because guys just don't want to deal with, all the spotlight that comes with it. But that's exactly who he is. He only cares about himself. I said it on the radio here in Toronto, and I'll say it again. He only cares about himself. He's a genuinely bad person, and quite honestly, he got what he deserved. It's a garbage move what he did in Columbus. There's plenty of garbage that he did in Toronto and Detroit. He's never learned his lesson, and I would tell this right to his face if I ever got the chance to talk to him again.
Why was he able to? So, was he a good coach? I mean, obviously, bad person.
Okay.
Was he a good coach? Like, he had so much success in Detroit. Was that a function of the players, or was that a function of his coaching?
I think they actually won in spite of him. Okay, but and they probably should have won more with him there. But I will give him this. Okay, if the four of us are sitting in a room and he's got a screen up and he's got some hockey clips, we will all learn something about the game. Okay, we'll learn something. He can break it down for us. He can tell us exactly what's happening. I think he's quite smart that way, and that's what makes it so much of a shame and makes it, like, so sad, because he can positively impact so many hockey players and just be such a positive influence on them. But he has this massive ego, this power trip garbage that he has to instill upon everyone. You know, and as far as like running a practice, he can run a 35, 40-minute practice like so good. And you just, you know, you get off the ice and you're like, man, that was great. It was crisp. It was efficient. Loved everything about that. Those are the two areas where he's an incredible coach. As far as communicating with players, he's terrible at it. I think at times we've seen throughout his career where he's very stubborn in the sense that he refuses to make adjustments to teams. And it's because his ego is so big. And it's like one of those things where he's like, no, they adjust to me. I don't adjust to them. He's gotten burned by that many times in the playoffs before. But man, like, you can really learn something about the game if you sit down and watch some video with him. So that's why, like, I really do think it's such a shame, and it's so sad that he continues to act the way he does, because, you know, he could make a lot of people much better hockey players if he actually did care.
And it's like you said, Frank, like he might have had a lot of success, you know, in the NHL and internationally with Team Canada, but at the end of the day, he's not a good person. And he blew probably his last opportunity to be a head coach. Like, I think you'd agree, like there aren't going to be, you know, a handful of teams that are saying, oh, we got to bring Mike Babcock in. Like, I think
that ship sailed now.
That it's over, right?
That's it
so
now.
He had an opportunity, which he probably shouldn't have had in the first place, right?
No, and like, I can't imagine with all the heat that the Brass and Columbus faced, whether it was JD or whether it was Yarmo, who wants to deal with that? Like, you know, as a general manager, your margin for error is fairly thin to begin with, and you're going to go out on a limb for that guy. Like, if I'm Yarmo or if I'm JD, I'm thinking, I put my reputation on the line for this guy to go act like a piece of garbage and do that. And I trusted him and other people. Like, I was listening to that Columbus news conference. I believe it was the day of free agent frenzy. So I was at TSN. And the way that day works, everyone's in Studio 6, the big studio. You see like Duthie leading the panel. Everyone's in there. I was in a different studio with Lindsay Hamilton because we were doing the big board. So it's a big digital studio. And we're getting ready to go to air. And I have the Babcock, not the Babcock press conference, but the Yarmo JD one up. And they said something, and I think I like spit my water out. And they said, yeah, we got a lot of character references, and, you know, everyone we spoke to just had the best things to say. And I was thinking, who the hell did you talk to? Because I've never heard anyone say anything good. And so, you know, like those guys put their reputations on the line for him, and they got burned with it. So I highly doubt anyone's going to be willing to put their reputation on the line again for that guy.
What did he I mean, Mike Commodore, who's been on our show many times before, is vocal about how bad of a person Babcock is. You know, did he go after superstars as well, or did he just was he a bully and he went after the low-hanging fruit?
Oh, I mean, he's a bully. Like, he definitely goes after the low-hanging fruit. And, you know, but look at what he did to, I mean, listen, we don't need to rehash old stories. It's not my story to tell. But obviously, Mike Modano was one of the greatest American-born players of all time, bona fide superstar for a long, long time. Like, he went after Modano. He went after Jason Spezza. And Jason Spezza, of course, was, you know, at the last couple years of his career. But, you know, like, that's a big name guy. Like, that's a well-respected
Mitch Marner
guy.
Too, right, Frank?
Yeah, Mitch Marner, exactly. So, like, and you know what? Like, there's other stories that will never come to light. Like, I think of poor Johan Franzen and the stuff that he had to deal with Mike Babcock. Like, that's not a scrub either. So, you know, he did it to star players. He did it to guys that had no power on the team. He just, you know, I don't know why, but for some reason, he really enjoyed the intimidation and the bullying. And the thing that really rubbed me the wrong way, and I've explained this in the past, and I'll say it on your show, he won't tell you a straight up answer face to face. And people like to equate him with old school hockey. And it's not old school, because I played for John Tortorella, who's as old school as it gets. And Torts will come right up to your face and tell you you're playing like garbage and you're taking a nap on the ice. But he'll come right up to your face if you make a good play, and he'll tell you that was an unbelievable play and great job. And you see Torts, like I saw Torts when I was playing for Pittsburgh. I saw him when I was playing for Toronto. We dap it up. We hug a little bit, right? And that's the kind of relationship you can have with a guy like Torts, where he tells you, like I said with Bonus, he tells you exactly what you need to hear, not exactly what you want to hear, but you respect it. Babs would never do that. He wants to give you some roundabout way or excuse, or not give you the time of day. Quite honestly, it's quite cowardly. And that's the thing that rubs people the wrong way. Old school is not a problem. Demanding is not a problem. But bullying and intimidation, that is a problem. And that's, that was what he was doing.
And we'll get away from Babcock. It kind of turned into the Mike Babcock show there, Frank. But
you guys got me going. You guys,
We love your answers. It's just, we got to get away from Mike Babcock because let's be honest, none of us are fans of his. And the one good thing I would say about Columbus was that our good friend Dave, especially, developed a really close relationship with Pascal Vincent. So the good thing to come out of that was that Pascal got his first NHL head coaching job. So I just wanted to throw that in there. But I wanted to ask you, getting back to defensemen, because some of these contracts that have been signed, make a lot of sense. But I wanted to ask you kind of, and the ones I'm talking about, Devon Toews signed the long-term contract with Colorado. Owen Power also recently signed his long-term contract. And that was preceded by Rasmus Dahlin, who obviously got the big $11 million a year contract. And I wanted to ask you again, because you played in the NHL specifically as a defenseman and now as an analyst, what you're seeing, like we've been seeing a lot of defensemen getting paid. And obviously, there's guys like Adam Fox and, there's many others, Cale Makar. I mean, we could go through, 10 defensemen that are making over, $5 or $6 million a year. But how do you, is that a sign that, is that just a sign of how the game has changed to more mobile kind of roaming defensemen? And when you have these type of defensemen, obviously more so for Owen Power and Rasmus Dahlin than Devon Toews, who is more of a defensive defenseman. But is that just a sign for you how the game has changed over the last 3 or 4 years, that when you have that kind of stud dominant defenseman, I mean, you got to pay those guys the same amount, if not more, than your best forwards?
Yeah, it's funny. So I was having this conversation with someone yesterday. And so the Devon Toews contract comes through and I'm looking at the price and I'm like, it's a pretty good price, right? Like I would pay that guy that, I think it was 7.25, something like that. Like I would pay him that any day of the week. And we were talking about, these contracts that defensemen are getting. And I said, it's almost like a pay structure that you would see on like Wall Street in New York or Bay Street in Toronto, where it's like, here's your entry level deal. You do good, you hit your numbers and all that kind of stuff. And here's your second pay grade bump. And then here's your third pay grade bump, right? It just seems like, well, first of all, I think it has to do with inventory. Take a look at the UFAs every year. It just seems like the guys that are very coveted are just not available. So when you hit a home run and you draft a guy, or you hit a home run and you trade for an RFA like Devon Toews was, the Colorado essentially stole him, and they do well with your team, I think the first thing that comes to mind is lock this guy up long term. Let's not take any chances, right? Like we just saw with Jake Sanderson as well, where he was going to be an RFA, but if you know what you got and you want it there for a long time, you don't need to start playing this cat and mouse game where it's like, okay, we're going to bridge you, or we're going to try and squeeze you. Then we're going to do, it's like, listen, man, you want to play that game? Go look at what's out there. And no offense to the guys that are out there that hit the UFA market, but they're not game changers. They're depth pieces, right? Like, so Justin Hall is a player I'm very familiar with from my time in Toronto, right? He's a third pair guy, probably pretty good third pair guy. Makes $3.4 million out there. But that's not Devon Toews. That's not Jake Sanderson. It's not Pietrangelo. It's not Theodore, right? You know what I'm saying? Like we're seeing the lack of high-end elite defensemen hit the open market. And you can try and make those trades, but any team that thinks they have a chance at winning, they're not giving up a number one defenseman. It's just not happening. So really what needs to happen now is you need to draft well. You need to hope the player develops. And obviously the team plays a part in developing that player, and don't play the cat and mouse game. Like Shane Pinto right now in Ottawa, Like, I'm not going to call it a cat and mouse thing. The money should have been there for him, but you play with fire and you're going to get burned. So, you almost go about it and say, like, okay, here's your fair market value. We'll maybe give you a little bit more just to reward you, but you're staying here and you're staying for 8 years, and we're not even thinking about getting rid of you. And it's one of those things where there's just not a lot of high-end talent available on a year-to-year basis.
Frankie, one of the things we do here is not only do we cover the Winnipeg Jets, we also cover the Manitoba Moose. And one of the focuses this year is on all the Jets prospects, a lot of top prospects who are in the AHL this year developing. And I was talking to Colin Delia, who just got reassigned recently, and he talked about developing players in a winning culture. So from your perspective, as a guy who played in the NHL and the AHL, how important is that winning culture in addition to developing to give those guys that opportunity to jump to that next level?
I actually think that's such a good point. And, I think a lot of people look at the AHL and the prospect pools and say, don't have any old guys on the team, no vets, all 20 years old, play them 20, 25 minutes a night. We need to develop the guys. And I disagree with that. I think there still needs to be some semblance of, we're trying to win. You need to earn your ice. And because I went through it with Utica when I was in the AHL, and that was Vancouver's farm team at the time. I was 21 years old, my second year in the league, and we had a good team. And I don't know if it was designed to be a good team, but man, we were a good team. And Travis Green was the head coach, and Nolan Baumgartner was the assistant, and Paul Gerard, rest in peace, was the other assistant coach. I love Paulie. But we had a good team, and it dawned on me that year the importance of the games we were playing and the importance of the moments that we had to manage, where it wasn't just about going for a skate and going through some pylons at practice and, like people so-called what you would think is development. Development is developing, managing the clock, managing the game, managing your expectations as a player, managing the puck, all that kind of stuff. It can't just be a free-for-all. So for us, playing on a good team that year, I think a lot of players benefited from that mentally, because it was like, okay, not only are we developing, but we're learning how important it is to win, play like winners, act like winners. We ended up going all the way to the Calder Cup finals that year. We lost in 5 games, I believe, to the Manchester Monarchs, who were LA's farm team. And that LA team, like those players, a lot of them are still playing. Like Kempe is still playing. Nick Dowd is still playing. So I think both teams, yes, there was an emphasis on development, but there was also an emphasis on winning and the habits and everything that goes with that. And I think that's really important to strike a balance between the two. I'm not saying you have to have a whole team of 30-year-olds in the AHL, but you can't just have a team of 20-year-olds going out there getting their faces pounded in every single night, turning the puck over 14 times at the blue line because in the sake of development. Like, development is all encompassing. You're developing skill, but you're developing the habits that are needed in order to win at the NHL level. Ultimately, like when they tell you the NHL is a win now league, you develop those habits in the AHL.
Frankie Corrado, TSN hockey analyst. Frankie, you made a grave error this morning. This is your first appearance on our program, and you came and you did such a damn good job. We're going to keep bothering you to come back again and again and again. And unfortunately, that's now your lot in life, is being a regular here on this program. That's how good of a job you did.
No problem at all. And I'm actually doing a bunch of Jets panels this year, so I'm looking forward to that. We'll be covering the team quite closely.
Well, you're doing it. I think I speak for all of us. You're doing an awesome job on TSN. We love watching your analysis. And if you're willing to come on again, then we're absolutely would love to have you on again.
Anytime. Thank you.
Thank you, Frankie. Frankie Corrado, TSN hockey analyst. A pleasure this morning here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Take care. There he goes. Frankie goes. We go to break one last time, then we come back and wrap up with some final thoughts. We're heading into overtime here on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. Yeah, I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hey, Drew.
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go...
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs from restorative to cosmetic dentistry and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
Boston Pizza harnessed Fanalytics to test if the game is better at home or at Boston Pizza. The results are irrefutable. Catch the game at Boston Pizza, powered by Fanalytics.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
We did it again!
You're on fire, man.
There's power in a handshake after a great game or great deal. It shows professionalism and respect. Two qualities Zappia Group Realty take pride in. You don't build a business where 95% of your clients are referred by others without honesty, integrity, and total dedication to client satisfaction. To sell your home for more in less time, shake hands with Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Get started at zappiagroup.com.
Are you dreaming of your very own backyard rink this winter, but dreading the work involved? Well, stress no longer, because the Rink Guys are here to make it happen. The Rink Guys are Winnipeg's first outdoor skating rink installation and rink maintenance service. The Rink Guys offer free site evaluations and different rink construction options. Plus, they use a custom-sized liner to prevent any damage to your lawn. Lighting packages are also available to help illuminate your rink during those long, dark winter nights. To get your rink started today, visit therinkguys.com. Into overtime. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. You guys want to watch the Jeffrey Veal fight? Is that what you're saying? You want me to pull that up? Okay,
old-time hockey, baby.
Maybe while you're doing that,
pull it up. Hang on a second.
1 second.
Yeah, we go. Hang on, I got to mute it. I got to move it.
Put on your antlers. It's time for the Minuk Moose Minute on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
There we
Figured
go.
by doing that,
Okay.
we'd give you some time there, Drew.
Thank you. I appreciate the help. Here's the fight from last night. Dave, why don't you talk over the fight? You were there in person.
Unmuted. Got it. Daniel's call is amazing.
And they will start swinging. VL contact's good, and they're just going to tee off. Gallant, no defense in this one from either side. Gallant loses his helmet. VL swims over the top. They tie up another couple after the lines. Don't get in there. VL one more over the top.
It was a hell of a fight. I mean, it really was.
But like, how many punches were thrown there, Dave? Like, honestly, there might have been 50 to 60 punches thrown there.
I think more than in every other fight in the NHL last year combined is what that was.
That was straight chucking.
That fight was insane. And, those guys were almost teammates. They both played in the San Jose organization. Gallant is a tough tough guy. He is. VL is pretty tough as well, but that was an old school 1980s. That looked like Bob Probert, Ty Domi.
They have history?
I mean, I have no idea. I'd have to look. I wasn't certain, but like I just was, and it was crazy because the Moose were
you
up
could easily find that on Hockey Fights, Drew.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm sure.
No, it was unbelievable. I mean, the Moose were up. Nikita Chibrikov, the 2021 second rounder. I will do a quick Moose minute. Scored his first goal, kind of a blooper. We've got them all featured, of course, on the website and on IC Dave. And so he scored from center ice on the reigning back-to-back goalie of the year, Dustin Wolf.
That was a very weird goal.
Very unusual.
It was like that was also like a blooper, right? Like,
oh yeah,
it was completely random. And obviously Dustin Wolf is a guy that many think is the best goaltender in the AHL, right? I might be one of those people, but that was a weird one.
No, it was a weird goal to give Chibrikov his first goal on his first AHL shot, and then of course Brad Lambert scored a beauty on the power play to make it a 2-0 game, and then the fight between
all downhill from there.
Gallant and no, actually it didn't. They actually had a phenomenal first period. They outshot him 13-5
on the scoreboard. It was all downhill.
Drew, you're not the Moose insider, okay? Just let Dave go here.
Anyways, it was just I'll go quick, but the Moose had a 2-0 lead, and the tilt. Sometimes those tilts can give the team that's down a little bit of a gas, but the Moose were clearly had their foot on the gas the entire first period. And then, of course, Calgary, who were a 106-point team last year, they've lost some of their players who have graduated, but they're still a very good hockey team. In fact, the guy who scored the goal, the nemesis of Tyrell Bauer, Adam Klapka, got the game-winning goal early in the third period to give him a 3-2 lead, and then they got another one to make it 4-2. So that was the end of that game, and they'll have a rematch tomorrow. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about it tonight, but I just wanted to get that fight in because that fight was absolutely insane.
It was a good chucking of knuckles, no question about it. Later on tonight, the Illegal Curve post-game show, 5:45, give or take a couple minutes.
Is that tonight, though, or is that this afternoon? I would say that it's the afternoon.
This evening. How about this evening? Late this afternoon, early this evening? Can you give me that?
The evening does not start until 6 o'clock.
Okay, fine. Late this afternoon, early this evening is what I'm going with. Final
Even though at the Ginsburg home, we used to eat dinner very early. John Ginsburg, God bless him, Dad. Hope you're watching right now. We had early dinners at the Ginsburg home. It was always like 5 o'clock to 5:05. Actually, Richie, who we're going to celebrate his 40th birthday next week. Thanks for organizing your party on a Jets game day, by the way. Right in the middle of the Jets post-game show, Richie. I'm obviously joking. But Rich always used to make fun of us because we would have early dinners. Because let's be honest, like some families have dinners at 7, 8 o'clock. So, but in the Ginsburg home, it was always 5 o'clock sharp.
Well, we appreciate that breaking past news update about what you did in your childhood, but that was good nonetheless. Hell of a fun show, boys. A lot of fun today. Want to say a big thank you to everyone who joined us this morning, all you in the chat and all of those lurking, watching, but maybe not chatting. If you haven't already done so, smash the like button, subscribe to the podcast, subscribe to the YouTube channel, leave us feedback here, there, and everywhere regarding everything you've seen here on this fine program. Want to say a big thank you to all our sponsors. They make the Saturday show, the post-game show, the website a possibility. Our friends at Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Linden Market Dental Center, Zappia Group Realty, Betway, Tough Duck, Boston Pizza. Regarding Boston Pizza, we're just trying to nail down the next date for our live on location broadcast, watch party, and post-game show. So stay tuned for more information on the next date coming up in November when we'll be at Boston Pizza again, doing the thing we did this past Wednesday. That was a ton of fun. Our friends at Seagram's, of course, great sponsors. Rolly's Transfer. Support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. 4 hours until game day, probably about 6.5 hours until the post-game show. Be sure to keep it locked on illegalcurve.com and all of our social medias between now and then, and we'll see you later on this afternoon or this evening for the post-game show after the Jets and the Florida Panthers.
Enjoy the gala tonight,
Thank
Drew.
you. I will enjoy the gala. For Dave Minuk, for Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mindell. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.